All right, so moving on to something that we talked about on last week's show that spawned one of the great rants in the early history of the 9x9.
See,
It was,
I actually wonder if that rant is what gave me COVID, and that list is what gave me COVID, because it was pretty much, like it says it's supposed to like 2-3 days to germinate. We did the show on Tuesday. My girlfriend did come home from a trip with COVID where she already knew she had it on Wednesday, but no, I think I caught it on Tuesday because of how bad this list was and my subsequent reaction.
Oh my god. So yeah, I've went back and listened to that rant so many times already. It was tremendous. So we absolutely went in on this list and then the corresponding women's list. Again, women's volleyball fans, don't hate us. We will make our own women's lists and discuss them in detail on next week's show. So check that out, and then definitely follow Volleyball Source on Instagram when we post those and have the discussions. But Everett and I have made lists of our own because we went in so hard on Volleyball World for making this list. That's an absolute joke. It is only fair that we make lists of our own. So Everett, we're going to start with yours. Here are Everett's top 12 men's players for the calendar year 2021. And that's the important thing to note here. It's not best players in the world as of year end 2021. It is the list of the top 12 players in terms of what they accomplished, both individual and team, in the year 2021. That's the framework here. Everett, take it away.
So let me first and foremost, I guess, preface this by saying that this was mostly created under COVID brain. I was literally like, we had a call on, what was it, like Friday night, to kind of discuss it, and that was literally as things started going downhill for me. So even by like looking at it over the past day or two, I'm already questioning some of my decisions. But we can kind of it's further down the line, not at the top.
Yeah.
First and foremost, Irvin Engapeth is my number one player of the year. He didn't have a great club season with Zenit Kazan, hasn't had a great club season with Modena, but how can you deny the Olympic MVP? Solely for that. He won the Olympic MVP. I think he was a much larger part of the win for France than Antoine Brizola was. Led scoring for France at the Olympics. I think he was second overall for scoring at the Olympics. He's Irvin Engapeth. He's always noteworthy. He's always topical. He's like the Antonio Brown with slightly less controversy of volleyball. You got to give him respect. So Irvin Engapeth at number one. One of the most egregious leaves off this list had to be Nimir Abdel-Aziz. First of all, what was he, like one of the top scorer in Super League in the calendar year of 2021? He was the top scorer in Super League.
Going back to Volleyball World's list, because I didn't even realize that they forgot about him. That absolutely blows my mind.
So not only was he top scorer in Superliga, helped incredible Trentino team helped the Trentino team make an incredible run from the qualifying of Champions League all the way to the finals.
Yes.
Led was the top scorer in all of VNL, right? Obviously didn't get a chance to go to the Olympics, but still, like, how can he not be on your list when he's topping all of these top level competitions? Nimir Abdel-Aziz at number 2. Number 3, Luciano De Cecco. Hard to argue with that. Massive year with Lube, won the Scudetto, decent run at Champions League, led Argentina to a historic third place at the Olympics. Like making a guy like Bruno Lima the top scorer at the Olympics. No shade against Bruno Lima at
that. That's medal worthy right there.
Like that's 100% the ability of Luciano De Cecco, right? Cooper Cup is not what he is this year without Matt Sanford. Bruno Lima is nothing without Luciano De Cecco. Luciano De Cecco at number 3. At number 4, I've got Wilfredo Leon. Now, a lot of people, including you, would kind of disagree with this and be like, why? Why is he so hot? But hey, he was still the second top scorer on a Perugia team. He still dragged that Perugia team all the way to the finals. I mean, let's look what they had around him. They had Travis
really
to
did
just
drag them.
Like, he put that team on his back so much more than, like, that was like watching LeBron and the Cavaliers in his first stint of the Cavaliers. Like,
it's actually exactly like that. He dragged a very bad team to the finals and lost to a team that was better than him. That Perugia team last year, now that I look back on it, may have been the worst team ever to make the finals of the Italian league. like their roster top to bottom was bad. They had that horrible problem with opposite last year. They had just a walking garbage can setting the offense. They had their second middle was a complete non-factor, but they had Wilfredo Leon and he carried them. So I don't disagree with that pick at all. He's a little further down my list, but the fact that he was left off of this list right here really sent both of us into an absolute tailspin last week, because regardless, like independent of this list, because this is only about 2021, Wilfredo Leon is the best player in the world.
100%.
Don't be forgetting that.
He's the LeBron James of volleyball, right? Doesn't matter if LeBron's having a rough year with the Lakers. He's still the best player in the world, right? Moving forward, Alessandro Micheletto, we've talked about it before. He is the unicorn. He is the future of volleyball. Massive year with Trentino. I mean, no one could see it coming. Relegated Dick Coy to the bench. Who would have thought, right? Massive run with Italy at the Euro Volley. They win it. He's the MVP. Then he goes on to win the U20 World Championship with Italy again. He is the future of volleyball. He's done amazing things with Trentino already this year. Massive. Number 6, Robert Landy Simone. I mean, we were looking at it earlier. He is second right now in Champions League scoring, and that's out of the middle. I mean, yeah, like let's put a knock on him, the fact that he plays for Cuba, and Cuba isn't in any competition just because they get too much. They spend their time getting beat up by Canada, and he's still as you said last week. Not only is he a top 3 middle in the world, but he's a top 5 player in the world. He's so dominant. He's whether it's from the baseline, whether it's blocking, whether it's attacking, you need to key on him. So he has to be in the top 10 at the very least. Next, I had Pavel Pankov. Pankov. Now, this one was mainly due to, if you go to the Volleybox top players of the world, he was ranked number 2 on their list. And I thought Pankov had a phenomenal year, right?
He did.
I think people forget that Russia got second at the Olympics, right?
People do forget that.
Like they still had a fantastic year. He's still for so long. How long have we seen? It's been since Buko was good that we've seen a good setter for Russia. So Pavel Pankov is the next one. I mean, he won the CEV Cup with Dynamo Moscow. They won.
He was the MVP as a setter, and then they mopped the floor in Russia domestically. That was really one of the great club seasons by a setter that I personally have ever seen. It was amazing.
Yeah. So Pavel Pankov has to be in there. Likewise with Ivan Yakolev. Yakolev, as Dan from 5-1 says, he's your favorite middle's favorite middle. And that's exactly what he was last year. He was absolutely dominant, hands down one of the top players in the world, and not only for Dynamo Moscow, but also for Russia. Next up is Lucarelli. Lucarelli, massive year with Trentino. Started really bad. We were really, really tough on him in the Discord, but turned things around. And I mean, hey, Brazil went all the way to the finals at VNL, right? They won VNL, right? So they were there. The only real blip on his year, or Brazil's year in general, was the Olympics. And I mean, hey, shit happens at the Olympics. Next up, you said Cheninese isn't a top player, and I fully disagree with that.
So this is number 10, by the way, just to keep track of the numbers.
We're at number 10. I think Cheninese is hands down a top player. I think he's one of the top middles in the world, up there with the 2 Serbians, Simon and Yakolev. I think one of the biggest holes that we're seeing with Vibo this year is Cheninese. I think one of the brightest spots for Milan has been Cheninese. So I definitely disagree that he's not a top player. Bruno is on this list. Kind of regret that one, I won't lie. Especially since last week I said it was questionable that the Volleyball World has 3 setters in their list, and I go out and put out my own list with 3 setters on it. The bottom of this list was very much this is very much COVID brain, because we did our list and we were going to be releasing it much sooner, but I was in no state to be thinking at all. And Rob was pestering me for days with it as I with COVID, and I just kind of put it in there. So I brought in Bruno Rezende. He did win the Brazilian Superliga with Brazil, so there's that, and then obviously a VNL title. So there's even though he's not necessarily supposed to be there, he still did good things, and he's still Bruno. And then finally rounding it out, I had to put a libero, and if I could redo it now, I would put in Balasso instead of Grebennikov. Balasso was massive for all of his teams, and he's one of the top rated players on the Volleybox. rankings, and he was winning top libero awards at multiple championships. So yeah, I think I would have put him ahead of Grebennikov, who had, a questionable season with Modena. It was really just him
Yeah,
and
his team was
Shinton.
bad. What do you want him to do? He's a libero. Like, how much can he do? And then he wins Olympic gold. I agree with Grebennikov being the top libero on the list for the record. You'll see mine in a
Yeah.
second.
Although I do think that Balassa was better this year. But yeah, hey, he was one of the best players for Modena last year. Helped France win an Olympic title. So yeah, I think Grebennikov has to be on the list. Honorable mentions, we've got Facundo Conte, played for Seta Cruzeiro last year, had a fantastic Olympics. Bruno Lima, as I mentioned before, because of his fantastic Olympic performance. Camille Semenya, who has so far leading the Champions League in scoring this year, which is throughout most of 2001, led them to the Champions League last year. We got Ben Poniuti, of course, and Zatorsky, both those players who played for Zaxa as well. So that is my top 12 list. What do you think, Rob?
I will go through my list really quickly. And I'm glad you brought up the Volleybox list a couple times. Go to volleybox.net, people, if you haven't already. A great resource. But they have like an objective list, like a calculation that they did for ranking players in the year 2021 based on like individual awards, team performances, and multiplied by the importance of the tournament. I thought it was interesting. Some of their things I think could use a little tweaking, because they would like give a person double points for a best scorer and also a best spiker award. That doesn't really make sense. But coming up with some objective metric for ranking players is a great start. So I enjoyed that, and I used that kind of as a framework to make this list.
It was much better than the FIVB's one. That's
much better. Because it's, by people who actually watch volleyball sometimes. My most controversial pick comes at number one. My number one player of the year 2021 is Benjamin Toniuti, the setter of France. And part of why I made this pick is to throw it directly in the face of Volleyball World's list, because they put Antoine Brizard at number one. I put his French setting counterpart at number one in the world. And here's why. There hasn't been a player that has won the Champions League and the Olympics in the same year since Maxim Mikhailov in 2012. The Volleyball World list and also Everett's list had 0 players in the top 12 from that Zaxa Kezers and Kozle team that won the 2021 Champions League in absolutely historic fashion. We talked about Zaxa a couple weeks ago after they played Lube and lost, and without Toniuti on that team this year, they're not the same. They completely rewrote the book on what a Champions League winning club volleyball team could look like. Toniuti was the engine of all of that. He was able to accomplish that despite being like 5'10" at most, or whatever it is that he is. Absolutely unbelievable. And even though he was not the starting setter in the back half of the Olympics for France, he still has the hardware of Champions League gold and Olympic gold. No other player in the world did that this year. No other player in the world has done that since 2012. And for that reason, he is number one on my list. I think that nobody else is valuing Champions League in these rankings nearly highly enough. So Toniuti is my number one. DeCecco is my number two. Very similar reasons to Everett. Scudetto with Lube. If he had beaten Zaxa head to head in Champions League in that matchup, there's a real case to be made for DeCecco number one. But Lube wins the Scudetto. DeCecco and Argentina win a historic Olympic bronze. And then Lube's been the best team, or the second best team in Italy so far this season. So DeCecco is my number two. Irvin Ingapet, number three, Olympic MVP. All the reasons that Everett said, but I don't have him higher because his career in Zenit Kazan was just not very good. And for Modena this year, we've already discussed Modena enough on this show. So for club, there just wasn't that much for me for Ingapet. However, his contributions to the Olympic gold medal can't be overstated, even though I think that Jean Patry deserved the MVP of that tournament, for the record. My number four player in 2021 is Nimir Abdel-Aziz. Exact same reasons Everett said. I think you had him at four also, right? Oh, you had him at two. I had him at four because he didn't win anything. If Trentino had won Champions League, he probably would have been number one for me, maybe. But second in Champions League with Trentino, third in the Super League. By best player by far on a bad national team. Nimir cemented himself as perhaps the best opposite in the world in the year 2021. And even though he didn't win anything, he deserves a very high spot.
Perhaps. Perhaps.
I
Like
could I
what?
could
What?
I
Like
will argue Maxim Mikhailov to the ends of the earth in that discussion. So that there still is an argument to be made, but Nimir is way up there and deserves a top spot on this list. Alessandro Micheletto, number 5, was, I mean, we already talked about him. At age 19, he was, a starter on a Champions League second place team, a starter on an Olympic team that, I mean, they got 5th. That's not great. He won Euro volley. He was the MVP at U20 World Championships, and he's, in the last 12 months, he's become one of the best players in the world, seemingly overnight. He's unbelievable. He deserves that spot. Robert Landy Simone, number 6, is the prime Dwight Howard or the Shaquille O'Neal of volleyball. He's truly a top 5 player in the world in general, just in terms of 2021 accomplishments. He did absolutely nothing on the national team. So despite his unbelievable seasons with Lube, he is at number 6 for me. Number 7 is Wallace de Souza. I don't understand why people aren't talking about this guy. In terms of Brazilian players, he had by far the best year. He had a forgettable club season with a Turkish team going in.
yeah, that's what I'm gonna cut you off here for a second.
MVP of VNL. He was the MVP of VNL. The reason why they won that tournament was because Wallace was unbelievable in the playoffs. And he won a club world championship with Sada Cruzeiro, beating Lube and Trentino, which is a tournament that nobody has talked about in any way. And I believe that Sada Cruzeiro, those 2 Sada Cruzeiro wins over Trentino and Lube head-to-head are important. And Wallace, with those 2 major competition wins, one of them the MVP, by far the best Brazilian player this year.
I mean, hey, I think, first of all, I think maybe we tend to overvalue Brazilian players when they're playing within the Brazilian system, right? And we can use Uncle Mo and a superstar Douglas over there in Vibo as the perfect example. And I mean, hey, last year he had a very forgetful year at Sport Toto, like not even winning anything in Turkey.
They won the Turkish Cup, and he was the MVP.
Okay, they won the Turk Cup, but they didn't win the league, right?
No, they didn't.
So, where are we getting off here that Wallace de Souza had a fantastic year? And yeah, you want to talk about winning Sada Cruzeiro. I mean, Ronnie is spanning the chat right now for one player that we've forgotten. Hey, I think if we do a 2022 list, that list might be very different and have this guy on it. But I think, Miguel Lopez, the Cuban phenom, has something to do with that, maybe a little bit more than Wallace de Souza does. I don't agree with that at all. And again, Lopez is Cuban and did nothing on the national team this year. If they didn't have a chance to, and that's why I'm saying for 2022, I think he's going to be one of the guys. But yeah, the only guy on this list that I'm questioning for you is Wallace de Souza.
Nope, I'll absolutely defend that. He had the best year out of Brazilian players, and I will not accept arguments to the contrary. He was the MVP of VNL. He was the best player for the team that won that tournament, and he won a Club World Championship. Other than that, there were no other Brazilian players, especially not Bruno. Lucarelli, maybe you could argue, but Bruno, no chance he belongs on this list. Lucarelli did not accomplish as much as de Souza did, so Wallace is my pick at number 7. Wilfredo Leon is number 8 for me. We already talked about him. He carried the absolute shell of a bad Perugia team to the finals last year. But for Poland in the Olympics, they were extremely disappointing. In Eurovolley, Poland was extremely disappointing. And then his last chance to win anything in the year 2021 was the Super Cup in Italy, which Perugia lost to Trentino in the semis. So the only reason Leon isn't higher as the best player in the world is because he had 0 wins. He had no trophies in the year 2021, and a player of that caliber, I expect to have some. Simone Gianelli is my pick at number 9. He had, I think, so I already have 3 setters on the list. I had Tony Udi 1, DeCecco 2, and then now I have Gianelli number 9. Great with Trentino last season, second in Champions League. Great with Italy. He was the MVP of Eurovolley, not Micheletto, for the record.
Right. I did make that mistake.
That was Gianelli. He was also the subject of the biggest off-season move in all of club volleyball this summer. And his move to Perugia is, well, part of that is considering how big of an upgrade he is over Dragan Trashcan. But the start of the season that he has had, and now Perugia hasn't won anything yet, so that's why he's not even higher on my list. But based on the eye test, the way that Perugia team is playing now with Gianelli versus what they were, or even what they have been like this year when Gianelli got COVID and we had to see Travica again, who is just so bad. The difference that he makes is unbelievable, and that's why he's number 9. Zhenya Grebennikov is number 10 for me. Yeah.
Can I interject? If I
Yeah.
could make one change to my list, I would take out Bruno and I would add Gianelli in and put him way up. I think that was a huge oversight my part not having Gianelli in. And I think that the what he did with his teams this season and the way that he put them on his back, both with Trentino, like not even counting what he's been done with Perugia so far. And I mean, the first half of the season wasn't great for Perugia, especially losing that Supercoppa at the beginning of the year. But like what he did with Trentino and then what he did with Italy at the European Championships, 100% my bad for not having Gianelli, and I'll give you that one that you had Gianelli and I don't. So yeah.
Okay, that's okay. That's an honorable take. Yeah, I think Gianelli. To your point about why he had such a good year, I think Gianelli is starting to get to the point where just teams that he is on win or at least overperform, and that is kind of what
seen that with him,
right? And that's kind of what. And that's what I expect out of Bruno. That's why that goes back to my point about why Modena is struggling a little bit. That's what I expect out of him. That's the X factor that he's supposed to bring to teams that he's on. But Gianelli is, I think, the next setter. And there are some truly elite setters who make bad teams better or who make good teams great or make great teams champions. Like, I think Gianelli is totally one of those guys. And yeah, that particular Italian team that won Eurovolley should not have done so, and they would not have done so without him. So Grebennikov at 10 is my only libero on the list. Alexander Slivka is my number 11 because I had to have another guy from that Zaxa team. And the reason I put him in and not Semeniuk is because Slivka was the MVP of that tournament. I think Semeniuk is the better player right now, and I think I would prefer him on a team right now. But neither of them played very much or were very good when they did. Well, Semeniuk was great when he played for Poland, but he played like 2 sets in the entire Olympics. Slivka played a little bit more and wasn't as good, but the MVP of Champions League goes a long way for me. And then Ivan Yakovlev, I had to have another middle in there. I thought he had an unbelievable year last season. ZSP was good, like almost the best team in Russia, and he was tremendous at the Olympics. I think he was the best middle at the Olympics. So my honorable mentions are Jean Patry, who I talked about. I thought he should have been the MVP of the Olympics. Pavel Pankov, who ever talked about, Pavel Zatorsky, who won that with Zaxa, Maxim Mikhailov, who's just a legend, and then Fabio Balasso, who ever talked about as well. So that is our top 12 lists. Go on to the Volleyball Source Instagram, where I think there's still a poll up right now where you can vote in the stories about whose list is better. So it's go there.
It's currently 69-31 in favor of me.
You have 69. That's
I have. Oh wait. Yeah, 49 to 22 overall in votes.
Okay, yeah. That's not nearly enough votes. We need many, many more votes on that poll. So head over to @VolleyballSource on Instagram and vote on that. Yeah, those are our top 12 lists. They've been a subject of much debate. The Discord was going nuts about them when I posted them, I think, yesterday. So it's been fun, and we promise that we will do the exact same thing on next week's show for the women. And that Volleyball World list for the women may honestly have even been worse than the men's.
Jeez, oh, man, the women's
so bad.
Yeah, the women's was also bad.
So bad.
Yeah, and definitely, especially now that I'm going to be better for COVID. Hopefully, it's been like almost a week now. I've still got it. So hopefully it gives us some time to be able to whip up that women's list.
All right.
I do think it's very indicative that there's not one Japanese player on either of our lists. Now, once again, like no hate towards Ishikawa or Nishida. I think both those players are fantastic. But let's stop pretending like they are top level players. Let's stop pretending that they're top level superstars, right?
No, they're not.
The fact that Ishikawa was featured on that list was a joke, and it's just complete lip service to Japan. But it's not realistic. It's not real. So yeah, I would love to see in a real world where there's actual Japanese players who are good enough to be on that top 12 list. And I'm sure that, you know what, I'd love to see a time when maybe Nishida isn't injured and, you know, is doing good things for Vibo. But yeah, it's just not realistic. So hopefully the fanboys won't get too mad about that with us.
I want the fanboys to get mad because I want them to come at me, and I will strike them all down individually with the fact that I actually watch volleyball. And then the only other notable thing is that Volleyball World's #1 player did not appear on either of our lists. Other
No.
than that, the members of the list were similar enough. The order was definitely different, and we had some honorable mentions as well. But other than the Brizard pick at number 1, which is unforgivable, and the Ishikawa inclusion whatsoever, everything else was just moved around. So the women's
Mikhailov.
list, Mikhailov, I had an honorable mentions, and I thought he was awesome.
More
But
or
like,
less, yeah.
if I think this particular, like next year, if the Olympics were next year and it was this Zenit Kazan team instead of last year's Zenit Kazan team, he would have been in my list for sure. But Irvin Ingapet made that Zenit Kazan team last year pretty bad.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And Butko. So anyway, I think that's about it for that discussion. It's been fun to put those together, and we will do the same for the women's.